Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 761. Good People and Good Deeds. What happened? Klein instantly tensed up. He had experienced too many accidents in the past, and he knew that he easily found himself involved in beyonder matters. Upon encountering something similar, he couldn't help but subconsciously be on alert. It did resemble some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. After seriously watching Hazel Mock's figure disappear from the staircase, Klein sensed that she was only in a hurry and wasn't panicking. This means that she has the matter under control. Besides, Mock is a member of Parliament of the House of Commons, a member of high society just below the nobles in the kingdom. There should be beyonders around protecting him. Yes, Earl Hall's eldest son is here too, so his bodyguards must be beyonders as well. Besides, St. Samuel Cathedral is only a 10-minute carriage ride from Buckland Street. If anything were to really happen, the Nighthawks, priests, and bishops would rush over. Unless one has made up their mind to sacrifice themselves, no one would create an accident at this ball. Klein gradually calmed down and had another guess regarding Hazel's situation. She was rushing to the third story to resolve the negative effects of the mystical item. The question Klein had asked the Rhodes previously was where he could obtain a mystical item which could steal the beyonder powers of others, and one of the answers he received was Hazel Mocked. Thinking back to their dance, Hazel's image rapidly reconstructed in Klein's mind with her different accessories as his focus. Hair ornaments, earrings, necklace, brooch, fishnet gloves. Which one could it be? Klein retracted his gaze and found himself thirsty. Hence, he picked up a cup of water and downed it. Just as he put down the cup, he saw his etiquette teacher, Wiana Heisen, approach him with a plate. This lady was dressed in a red dress, but she didn't look tawdry. She smiled at Dwayne Dantes and said, "I noticed that you don't enjoy drinking alcohol. I've once missed an important matter as a result of drinking." Klein randomly fleshed up Dwayne Dantes's character as an experienced person with depth. Of course, he knew how to restrain himself. He didn't use his faceless powers to remove a finger to prove how determined he was when making that former oath. When Wiana heard that, she smiled and thought, "Your past is filled with mystery. This is fatally attractive to many young ladies." She didn't continue on the topic as she said, "I forgot to tell you that the problem my husband faced has been resolved." Klein picked up a cup of champagne and raised it. He then said with a smile, "This is something to be happy about. Congratulations." He didn't mention anything about him helping in secret. Wiana gave him a deep, penetrating look as she raised the cup of red wine in her hand. "Cheers!" After clinking cups and taking a sip, Klein politely excused himself, put down his cup, and headed for the washroom. This wasn't because he wanted to head above the gray fog, but was solely due to the negative effects of death knell. He had drunk too much water and needed to relieve himself. When he walked out of the washroom, Klein looked up at the staircase that led from the second story to the third story. He found Hazel Mock walking down with unhurried footsteps. She wore an unperturbed expression. Indeed, it wasn't a huge problem. It's likely a result of the negative side effects of the mystical item she possesses. I wonder what it is. Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he casually swept the dance floor. During the interlude between two songs, he walked over to a lady and invited her to a dance. With Dwayne Dantes's appearance and bearing, his invitation was undoubtedly accepted. With him dancing, eating, chatting, and eating again, the ball slowly came to an end as the guests bade farewell one after another. Having completed his mission of exchanging name cards, Klein did the same. However, he wasn't the first or last person to leave. The hall soon turned silent as Ma'am Rihanna monitored the servants while they cleaned up the area. Meanwhile, she beckoned for her daughter, Hazel Mocked. "Mr. Dwayne Dantes's performance was better than I imagined. Many ladies had even asked me about him in private," Ma'am Rihanna said in a veiled manner. "Hazel, what's your impression of him when you were dancing and chatting with him? You're a lot more mature than girls your age. I believe in your taste and judgment." She knew her daughter very well, and she had deliberately added the last sentence, Otherwise, Hazel was unlikely to be interested in giving a detailed answer. Hazel wasn't that arrogant when facing her mother, she said after some thought. He's not very familiar with this circle, and he easily mentions topics that can be offensive, but he's very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable. Mariana was slightly surprised as she repeated her daughter's words. With her understanding of Hazel, this was a rather good compliment. She couldn't help but be worried that her daughter had taken a liking to Dwayne Dantes. Hazel thinks little of the eligible bachelors around her because they are too young, inexperienced, and incapable? Dwayne Dantes happens to be the kind of man that girls who mature early like. Rihanna suddenly felt a little regret inviting the gentleman to the ball. She knew that with Hazel's personality, she might very well elope if she were to suffer any objection to her newfound love. Hazel seemed to sense her mother's thoughts and said without emotion, "I only like men who are sufficiently powerful." Phew! Rihanna silently heaved a sigh of relief as she was no longer worried about the problem from before. This was because Hazel was a girl who found lying beneath her. Late at night, Hazel got up from bed. With her night vision, she changed into clothes that facilitated movement. She climbed down from her bedroom's balcony and carefully avoided her family's bodyguards. She went all the way to the garden and came to the middle of Beauclun Street. Not every sewer manhole allowed a human passage with vertical metal ladders. Hazel adeptly moved the manhole cover away and climbed down before closing the cover from underneath. Nearly 45 minutes after, she moved the manhole cover again and returned into the shadows of the street. At this moment, Hazel saw a shadow nimbly flip into a garden nearby. Unit 160. She read the corresponding address. It was none other than Dwayne Dantes' residence. On the manor's third story, Klein was once again awoken from his sleep due to his spiritual intuition. He had the urge to capture the infiltrator that disturbed his sleep and feed it to creeping hunger. This time, he directly opened his iron cigar case and released his wraith marionette. Senor, in his dark red coat, first walked into the full-body mirror before leaping over to the oriel window in his valet's room. He observed Richardson and saw the valet sit up as he looked at the door with fear and anxiety. The door silently opened as a shadow flashed in. Under the crimson moonlight, the infiltrator exposed brownish-yellow skin, a soft outline, and short curly black hair. He obviously hailed from the southern continent. With a gloomy cold aura, he stood by the door and looked at Richardson, saying in a deep voice, "Have you decided? Do not believe that you can attain your calm life by leaving. Inside of you flows the blood of death's subjects. You are destined to give up everything to restore God's glory. Think about your deceased mother. Think about the insults you once suffered. Do you wish that your child will grow up under the contemptuous looks of others, to be a servant of others forever? But what can I do?" Richardson lowered his head as he said with great difficulty, "Wait for the mission." The infiltrator's voice turned gentler. Richardson didn't commit to an answer, as he seemed to be struggling inwardly. As for the infiltrator, he didn't seem to care about his hesitation. He treated it as though Richardson had agreed, turned around, left the room, and traced his steps back. Death's subject. Someone from the Numinous Episcopate, or another organization that's trying to restore Balaam? Having witnessed everything, Klein leaned back into bed and silently said, "What mission would they give Richardson? Steal my money to provide funds for the organization? Or will they create a terrorist incident at one of the balls of high society?" At that moment, the infiltrator had climbed down from the balcony, passed through the garden, and flipped over the perimeter fence made of steel bars. Suddenly, he saw a figure pounce over from his left. He dodged as he clenched his fist and threw a punch. Thud! The punch hit the black figure, but it pierced straight through. It was as though he had struck a shadow created by the street lamp. Meanwhile, he suffered a heavy blow to the back of his head as he fainted onto the ground. Hazel's figure immediately surfaced behind the infiltrator as she wore an excited expression. It was as though she had completed a successful scam. She quickly reined in her emotions as she maintained her arrogant demeanor. She turned to look at the black metal gates of 160 Beauclun Street. This girl bent her back and held the infiltrator by the arm as she dragged him to Dwayne Dantes' doorstep. Immediately after that, Hazel let go of her left hand, cleaned up any traces, walked forward with her chin slightly lifted, and pulled the doorbell. Then, she quickly departed, heading straight to her home through the shadows in the street. And on a street lamp outside Unit 160, on the black metal gate was a piece of glass. It reflected a figure wearing a dark red coat and an old triangular hat. It had seen the entire process. How should I deal with this? Inside the room, Klein was stumped. He knew that Hazel was doing a good anonymous deed for her neighbor to finish off an infiltrator, but this way, if his butler were to make a police report, the matter would be investigated in detail, causing the matter to be transferred to the Nighthawks. When the time came, whoever struck the infiltrator unconscious would become an important question. If Klein was really an ordinary person, it wouldn't have mattered. He could allow the Nighthawks to carry out their investigation. However, not only was he a powerful Sequence 5 Beyonder, but he was also scheming to steal an item from behind Cheney's gate. He didn't wish for any external setbacks to spoil his plans, or else he would have to change identities once again. To be frank, his earliest solution was to find a way to terminate Richardson's services. However, what he had heard changed his mind a little. If I were to terminate Richardson's services, it would be equivalent to pushing him into the abyss despite his desire for a quiet life. It will force him to mix with those people. Unfortunately, Dwayne Dantes has a mission. Otherwise, helping him in passing wouldn't be difficult. Klein sighed as he thought. 10 seconds later, the unconscious infiltrator suddenly stood up, cracked his neck, and hid in the nearby shadows. And at this moment, Butler Walter had walked out of the house's main door after hearing the doorbell.